Back with Noodles now to talk about the Canadian clubs. We are less than 24 hours away from the deadline. Still a lot up in the air for all of these Canadian teams. So we want you to take us through what the biggest needs are for these clubs ahead of the deadline. Let's start with the West.
Well, let's start with the Vancouver Canucks. I would say just get your house in order. Yes, you had the big move with JT Miller. They've got 3 Pedersons on their team, 2 defense and 1 forward. I would argue that the forward has to get his play in really to the top level. And you got to deal with Brock Besser at some point, whether you're going to extend him or going to move him. So there is some things that you can do to add to the group, but it's more about just internally. You want health from Quinn Hughes and you want Elias Pettersson to play better. So to me, it's about getting your house in order. With the Edmonton Oilers, there's moves to be made. I think they need a number 3 goaltender because they are pot committed with Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard. I think there's nobody out there that is an upgrade. I think they need a number 3 that has NHL experience. They also need a number 4 defenseman. Now, if they believe that Kulak is that, then you're looking at a 5 defenseman, and Emberson could be your 6. But I think they do need at least a defenseman that is impactful, and up front, maybe a 4th-line center and somebody who can add to the depth of the group that has some size and some pushback. When I look at the Calgary Flames, I think the Calgary Flames internally need to just continue to push. If there is a trade available to make your team better, not only for down the stretch, but into the next season and the following season, Craig Conroy should do that. And if you have maybe a veteran guy on a term deal that another team is looking at, probably look at that trade as well. But I don't think you do a lot. This group has given themselves an opportunity to compete and play meaningful minutes down the stretch. I think you'd allow that group to grow through osmosis unless there is a big trade to be made to help the group moving forward. When it comes to the Winnipeg Jets, I don't think there's much to be done. To be honest, they have depth. They've got great goaltending. Their D are mobile. They're big. They're mean. And 4 lines are as good as anybody in the National Hockey League. So it's more about guarding against injuries. So you want to add depth to the defense. You want to add depth to the forwards. Maybe a versatile forward. We know Kevin Cheveldayoff, every deadline, tries to add to this group, and it's kind of around the edges. You're not messing with the spine of the team. I would argue that that's probably what he's going to do again. With the Ottawa Senators, I think they need depth up front, maybe a 4th-line center. They've got Zach Ostapchuk, who's a fantastic young player, but he's 21. They're giving him some minutes in the minors. To me, you need a little bit more depth. They got David Perron. You need a healthy Nick Cousins. If they could get him back, that is helping to the group. And how about a defenseman? You know, they've got Jacob Bernard-Docker. You got Hamonic. They've got the injury to Clevin. So if you could add another defenseman to help that group, maybe an impactful guy or also a depth guy, I think that's what the Ottawa Senators are doing. But they're going to trust the spine of their team, the core of their team, to get them into the playoffs. With the Montreal Canadiens, I say stay the course. If there is a trade to be made, if somebody wants David Savard and you can get a return for him, go ahead. But this team has given themselves an opportunity to play meaningful minutes down the stretch and push for the playoffs. So if there is a trade that makes sense for this year and to next year, I'll get crazy and say if Buffalo wants to sell Dylan Cousins and you believe you can add a number 2 centerman to your group, then that's what you do. But I don't think you start adding unrestricted free agents and rental players just to try and strike at the playoffs. This group has earned it. Give them the opportunity and be smart. Proceed with caution. With the Toronto Maple Leafs, I think there is moves to be made. They certainly need a defined centerman. And what I mean by that, they've got Holmberg playing there. They've got Max Domi. They've got guys that can play center in the number 3 spot. But if you go and get a defined 3rd-line center or a guy who can play 2nd-line center and top 6 minutes, to me, that's impactful. That adds to the depth of your group. You've had Matthew Nyes push through. We know we always talk about it, the core 4 up front, but they need more depth and more defined depth for that group. And how about a right shot defenseman? Chris Tanev is fantastic. They're still looking for somebody to be consistent with Morgan Riley. But if you can add a defenseman that can play in maybe the 4, 5, or 6 hole, all that's going to do is slot guys a little bit better and create some healthy competition internally. So be interesting to see what all these teams do. but bigger picture, there's lots of moves to be made.
Yeah, now in terms of playoff positioning, the Leafs and the Jets and the Oilers are in pretty good shape right now. I want to ask you about the other 4 Canadian clubs. The Sens, the Habs, the Canucks, and the Flames are all fighting for wildcard spots in their respective conferences. So, which of these teams should go all in right now?
Well, I would say the Ottawa Senators are the closest to it because I think they believe they are a playoff team. The Calgary Flames stay the course. The Montreal Canadiens stay the course. Vancouver, I think, has been a fantastic team, but obviously the injury to Demko, you've got Hughes' injury, you've got Pettersson's inconsistency. So they're trying, as I mentioned before, to get their house in order. But I think the Ottawa Senators, it's not about going all in, but it's about finding the right fit for your organization to help add to the group to get you over the hump. So out of those 4 teams we're talking about, I think it's the Ottawa Senators are the closest to potentially pushing through. Everyone else has an opportunity to make the playoffs, and that's just through young players playing well and through the group that they've assembled already.
And of those 4 teams, the Sens have the shortest odds to make the playoffs at -245, the longest, the Habs, at +560. Jamie McLennan.